Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Hold on, hold on. Okay. So in the second task, we are asked to build a simple HTML page. But as anybody that doesn't know HTML will tell you, there's nothing simple about building a simple HTML page. But that's what we're here to solve, right? That's the problem we're here to solve. So, what are the things that you need if you want to build a simple HTML page? Well, number one, you're going to need a code editor, right? So it's either you're going to be using the most popular code editor is Visual Studio Code. So we are going to be using Visual Studio Code for this class. If you are not a developer or you're not training to be a developer, you might not have to worry about Visual Studio Code. But if you're going to be doing the front-end development or back-end development, then you will need to install Visual Studio Code. So, but I'm going to show you because I already have it. I'm going to just go ahead and open the one that I have, and then I'll use that one. So I have my Visual Studio Code here. Open it up. Okay. So in addition to having a code editor, the code editor is for you to write the code, and the next thing that you need is the browser that you can use to view the code. So we already have a browser here, our Google Meet. Sorry, our Google Chrome, our Google Chrome browser, right? And most people have browsers on their laptop. So once you have a code editor and a browser, I think you're good to go, right? You're 100% good to go. So let's begin. Let's begin. How do you start this kind of project? So I'm waiting for my terminal to open so I can open a new project from scratch. Just give me a sec. Give me a second. You might not even need to do all of this stuff I'm doing right now, right? What you just need to do is go to the folder where you want to be storing your projects. Most of you will be storing your projects in the documents folder. That's not a bad thing, you know. But personally, I use Linux. So I'm going to store my project here somewhere in my Linux. But the main thing is just go to that folder where you want to store your projects in, and then create a folder there for your project. Now, this part is very important. When you are building a project, especially as a front-end developer, right? That project is essentially like a bunch of files, right? And uh, those files are related to each other. They work together to like give you the complete project. So these files have to be in a folder, and that folder is what you now call the projects folder. So i- don't be creating your HTML and CSS up and down everywhere when you are trying to create a project. What you should do is when you want to create a project, first create a folder for that project. Then any HTML, CSS, any images, any type of file that you need to use for that project, you can store it inside that same folder so that everything is organized. And you see that that's what I'm doing here. I have HTML, CSS practice folder, I have login form folder, I have my personal portfolio, structural, whatever. So many of them, so many different folders. So this one we're going to call it IG Hub uh, Monday class. IG Hub Monday class folder. And you also notice that I did not leave any space in my folders. There is a dash indicating the space between the words. So it's important to do this as well because there are some times when you're going to be needing to open your folder in like a terminal or something, and it's just easier to reference that folder if there's no space in the file in the folder name. So keep that in mind. Okay, so we've opened this folder here. Now we are going to open it in our VS Code. So in my VS Code, I will go to File. Oh, my pen. Oh, if VS Code have not disgraced you in a day like this. Are you even living? Vivian, my pen. Okay, okay, finally. So I'm going to go to File, then click on Open Folder. Then I'll go to the folder, the folder that has the project, and bam, open it there. All right. Now we have it here. We have the folder here. So let's go and look at the task again. Let's go and look at the task again. So the task says create a basic HTML page with a title, a heading, a paragraph about yourself, an image, and a link to your favorite website. So let's go and create a basic HTML page. So when you want to create a HTML page, right, what you need is to create a HTML document. And the HTML document is essentially any document that has .html at the end. So what do I mean? Think about maybe all the files that you've encountered with, maybe let's say for example you've been able to like go through your gallery, right? You know that there are different types of image files that are available, right? Some image files are JPEG, so you see that they will end with .jpg, and then some image files are PNG, that's portable network graphics or whatever, and then those ones will end with .png. There's also SVG files. There are also documents. If you're working with documents, Word documents, you notice that most Word documents usually end with .docx, right, or .doc, depending. So the dot, whatever word is at the end of that dot, is often called a file extension, right? And if you want to create a HTML file, you need to use the appropriate file extension to create that HTML file. And the appropriate file extension to create a HTML file is whatever the name of your HTML file is fine, but it has to end with .html or .htm. Now, most people do .html, right? But once in a while, you might see .htm on some old websites or something. Don't freak out. It's the same HTML, you know. Still HTML. I just say L no day, you no get light. So L no day. So let's create a HTML file. Now, I told you earlier that when you're creating a HTML file, the name itself doesn't matter. What really matters is the .html at the back. That's true, right? But there is a rule with browsers that you also need to keep in mind. And that rule is when you're creating a project, the default page, the default HTML page of that project should always start with index.html, right? So this IG Hub Monday class now that we're creating should always have, is always going to have the default page will be index.html. So keep that in mind. So this default now is index. Then any other page, let's say I want to create an about page, a contact page, or any other page, I can use contact.html, about.html, whatever.html, right? But when the browser is reading this project as a whole, this index.html is the first page to open, right? So I just, people should just keep that in mind. It's going to be the first page that it will open. Come, Victor. Okay. Come the talk say, why is my face showing in your own face? Okay, let's get back to it. So index of HTML. Now, wait, let me disable this thing before this AI will distract me. No, not right. I mean, AI is good though, guys. If you want to use AI in your projects, that's very good. There's nothing wrong with it. You just don't let it get in the way of you actually learning this stuff, right? So sometimes just disable it and work on your own. Cut your teeth basically, you know. You never know what you will learn from just doing like 20 minutes of manual non-AI coding. Okay, so we've created the index to HTML. When you want to create a HTML project, I told you that the very first thing, that like the most important thing, is that you need to put that HTML element. But I didn't really explain what a element is, right? So let's look at what an element is. Now, a HTML element is essentially a piece of code that tells the browser how to display the content that you are putting in that HTML document. So the way to think about it is that your browser now is a computer, is an app on your computer, right? And then that app that is on your computer now, let's say you want it to display a heading, an image, and a paragraph, right? Now, if you just put in words in your HTML like that, your browser is not going to know exactly how to display it. So it's just going to go ahead and display all of them as a paragraph, even though it's meant to be a heading or it's meant to be an image, right? Like for example, let me just show you something. So let's say I say something like hello world. I'm just typing hello world in this my HTML now. I'm not even sure if it's open, but there's a good chance it will actually open. So let's go ahead and lose. Let me go live. Let me go live. So it's going to open in port 5501. Localhost port 5501. So you see that it will actually show. Interesting. Although it's not going to always behave like this so in every browser. So this is not like a best practice. I'm just trying to like illustrate something, right? So now let's say I wanted to make this in a header. I want to make it bold. If I highlight on it and do Control B, it's not going to do anything, right? So how do I make it bold? How do I tell the browser to make it bold? Do I put like a quote and say make it bold? Make it bold. Would that make it bold? No, it's not going to make it bold. Of course not. It's not going to make it bold. So the HTML element is what you use to like tell the browser, see, I want you to display this content like this. I want you to display this content like this, right? So let's see how it works. Let's go back to that hello world. Let's say I want to make it to be a heading in my HTML. I can put this heading element, this h1 that you're seeing here. If you hover on it, it will tell you the description. That's one good thing about VS Code sometimes. When you put a HTML element or some kind of code, you can hover on that code and it will give you a description of what that code does. So this h1 says here that the h1 element represents a section heading, and we know that by default headings are usually bigger than normal text. So I'm going to put that normal text below for reference so that you see the difference between both of them. So this is hello world as a normal text, no elements, and then this is hello world as a heading, right? Now I've done this to go to the browser. Let me refresh. You will see that the difference is very, very clear, right? This one now that has the HTML element of hello world, or sorry, of h1 on it, is displaying the text. The browser is taking it as a heading and displaying it very, very boldly. But this one now that doesn't have any HTML elements surrounding it is displaying normally. Let's even try a different HTML element. So I'm going to copy and paste this, but I'll change this h1 now to h2. So now we have h2, h1 and h2. Let's save it again and look at it. If I refresh the page, you see that the h2, right, is the same text, but just because there's a difference in the element, right, the text will display differently in the browser. So that's the key thing you need to keep understand about HTML elements. HTML elements are what tells the browser how to display the content. Remember that, of course, HTML, what HTML does is that you can use it to add structure and content, right? So how do you tell the browser how to display this content? That's with the HTML elements, right? So just keep that in mind. Now, when you're creating a HTML document, the very first thing you need to do is to declare the type of HTML that you're using. Now, the most recent version of HTML is HTML5, right? So when you want to declare it in this your HTML document, you use what is known as a doc type declaration. You can see that the definition of a doc type declaration is a preamble for an HTML document. So this is basically like the intro, basically telling the browsers, "Lekwano abiala mo, this is HTML, let's begin." You know. So after you've declared the document type to be HTML, the next thing that you now do is to put in the root HTML element. Let me do a recall back to the inspection that we did on the browser. You will notice that in this our browser, there's of course see the doc type declaration here at the top, right? Now there's also the root HTML element that contains everything, and then there's now the head and the body, which we'll get into very, very shortly. But that's just what I want to just keep you guys should keep in mind. No matter what, even if I inspect this one that is a Google search result, right? If I inspect it and show you the result, you will see that it's the same thing. It's the same thing. There's the doc type at the top, then you have the root HTML element, and then inside this root HTML element, you have the head and you have the body, right? Good. This one self is Nigerian English. Meanwhile, this one is US English. So you can see that you can even set the type of language that the HTML elements will have using the tag. So just going to put it normally since we're not doing like any international stuff yet. Okay, so the HTML element is there. Now the next thing that we are going to put is the head. If you remember from the last explanation we did on browser tools, I told you that the head is what you use to like put information about the website that the browser will use to understand how best to display the website. Search engines can also use that information to understand how best to like rank it, who they should recommend it to. So you can put things like keywords and all of those other things inside it. But we're only the only thing we're going to put here right now is the title of the website, right? So and that is the first thing that is supposed to be in this our um, basic HTML page, a title. So what are we going to use as the title for this page? Well, I can use IG Hub Monday class since this is the title of the page of the project itself, right? So I can use IG Hub Monday class here. Very good. Now, if I come here and refresh, you will see that there is nothing on the page. Even though we have put this title here, that is actually text. This is a text that is wrapped in a HTML element, but it is not showing up on the page. Why is it not showing up on the page? Let's go back to what I said earlier. The HTML head element is not for putting content that you want to display on the page. It is for putting content that the browser is going to use to understand what this website is and how it works. Do you understand? Are you following? Okay. So the one that you use to put content that will actually show up on the page is the body element. So body element. Now this body element now, anything I put inside here now will show up on the page. So if I say something like IG Hub Monday class again, I'm going to use full capital letter for this one so you can know the difference. IG Hub Monday class, save, and then come here. You will see that it is showing up here now. IG Hub Monday class. So another question: this title element, why isn't why if it's not showing up here? We've agreed that it's the browser that is showing it up. Where else can we see it? There's a place we can actually see this title in the browser because, like I told you, it's the browser information, right? If you drag out this tab so that it is only that is showing on the page, you can see that in the tab title here, you see the title element. So that's usually where the title element is in the tab title. Okay, so that covers basic HTML page with the title. So let's go ahead and put our heading, paragraph, image, and a link. Good. So let's start with the heading. Now, how do you put a heading in HTML? We already looked at heading before, but let's look at it one more time. If I want to convert this text into a heading, what I need to do is to wrap it in a heading element. And there are 6 heading elements in HTML. There is H1, H2, all the way to H6, right? We are going to use the H1 for this class, and then we'll put the text inside it. Now, there's something that you will notice about most of these HTML elements. Most of them appear twice. There's usually the one at the top and the one at the bottom, or the one here, and then the contents inside, and then the other one at the end. So, what is this? What is going on here? Well, a HTML element has 3 parts. A typical HTML element has 3 parts. It has the opening tag, right? Which is what tells the browser that, see you, I am about to display content as so 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 and so thing, right? Here it's telling the browser I want to display the content. This content now is coming now as a H1, as a heading, as a level 1 heading basically. Good. Now, so that's the opening tag. This is the opening tag. And then after the opening tag, what you get next is the content of that element. Now, the content of that element can be a normal text like this. It can also be a full-blown HTML element, as you can see here. So this title element is the content of the head element. The head element itself is the content of the HTML element. Same thing here. The H1 element has this IG Hub Monday class as its content, but the H1 element is a content of the body element. So you have the opening tag, the content, and then finally you have the closing tag. This closing tag is what indicates to the browser that this is the end of this particular element. So everything that is within this opening and the closing tag is part of the element, but anything after the closing tag is no longer part of the element, so they should treat it differently. So just keep that in mind. So we've done the one for the h1 here. We have the opening tag, we have the content, and then we have the closing tag. Now let us go ahead and create a paragraph. So to create a paragraph, you need to use the paragraph element, and in HTML the paragraph element is just p. Let me hover on this h1 so you see we already know that is the element that represents the section heading. Now the P element is so the P element represents a paragraph. Now, if you want to understand all about all these HTML elements, let's say you're curious, or maybe like you're a front-end developer, what else? You can always come and click on MDN reference when you hover on the text, and then it will take you to developer Firefox so that you can go and read up on that element. I think our time is almost up. We have about 13 minutes until this call ends. So um let's finish up real quick. Let's finish up real quick. Let's go back. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Okay. So, IGMOD class, what are we going to add as the paragraph? I'll say a quick 1 hour class on HTML and CSS in the browser. Okay. Save. Now let's go and see the output of our code. So if I come here, oh, it's already showing up safe. So we can see that this one is the heading. We can see that this one is the paragraph. Now, let's go and add and the next thing on our list. The next thing on our list is, I think, is an image. Oh, okay, a paragraph about ourselves. Okay, so here, just you need to put a paragraph about yourself, oh, please. Of course, the heading there has to be your name, and then the paragraph there has to be a paragraph about. You know what? Let me just quickly change this thing. So I'm going to say the title here is an essay about divine orgy. So this is the then then for the H1 I can say who is divine orgy, and then who is divine orgy. Divine orgy is do I even know who I am? Alright, Sinach, come quick, come quick. I'm working in power. Okay, so let's see. Who is divine orgy? Divine orgy is a software engineer. A software engineer. Hey, software engineer can't hard. Software engineer, mentor, and foodie. Am I a foodie? Everybody likes to say they are a foodie until they start paying for food. Hmm. Anyway, whatever. I'm a foodie. Alright, so a software engineer, mentor, and foodie. I code for fun. Alright, I think that's basically it. Whether you think that's the truth or not depends on how well you know me. Alright, yeah. Let's see the output. Let's see the output. Okay, yeah. So who is Divine Energy? Software engineer, mentor, food. Please, your paragraph should be longer than this, right? Just make it very, very descriptive. You think about something that would most likely be on your portfolio website if you're building a portfolio website, or on your LinkedIn page. Like for example, this is my actual portfolio website. Um, and on my actual portfolio website, I have like a lot of content that describes who I am and what I do. Good. So keep that in mind. Just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. All right, let's get back to it. Let's get back to it. So we've done the heading, we've done the paragraph. I think the next thing on the list is a an image. Cool. So how do you add an image to your website? Now, to add an image, you need to use the img element. So I'm going to create an img element, So an img element represents an image. Now, one thing that is different from an img element and all these other elements that we've done so far is that an img element does not have a closing tag. And the reason why an img element doesn't have a closing tag is because it doesn't have this kind of text content inside it. It doesn't need to have this kind of text content inside it. What it does is that it embeds an external file. The external file is embedded in this case is an image, right? So because what is embedded is an external file, it doesn't necessarily need a closing tag. And then an IMG element is one of those OG elements in the olden days that came out with the first versions of HTML. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't need an open. Now, elements like this that don't have closing tags are known as void elements. You call them void elements, or you call them self-closing elements. I think there's another name they call them, but these are the two that I remember right now. One more thing about an IMG element is that it needs two attributes. Now, what is an attribute? An attribute is some extra information about a particular HTML element. Like, it allows you to put extra information about a particular HTML element. Like, for example, the very common attribute I can use is a style attribute. So I can have this normal h1 here, and then this h1 I can add a style attribute to it and give it a color. So I can say color of let's say brown, color of brown, and save. Now, by default the h1 is black, right? But now I have added a style attribute to it, and then this style attribute now I've said that you should make the color brown instead of black. So if I go and look at the output now, you see that the color has changed from brown to black. If I put a different h1 that doesn't have this um style attribute in it, it will not have that color, right? So like I say, let me guess. Let me guess. So I put this h1 here, and you see that it is because it doesn't have the style attribute to it, right? There's no other extra information about it other than what we have here. So we can just do like that to just show up normally by default. So just keep that in mind, right? And there are so many things you can add with a style attribute, like you can add color to the style attribute. You can add the maybe should I say the font size? I don't know. I don't really want to increase the font size, but let me just do that. Sure. Font size, let's make it 4M. Save. You see how big it is now. So 4M is very big. Make it 2. Okay, back to it. So we have the img element, right? No self-closing tag. It has two attributes that it uses. The first attribute is the src attribute for adding the source of the image, and then the second attribute is the alt attribute for adding a description about that image. So source is like where's the image coming from. Alt is a way for you to describe that image so that people that cannot really see the image, or maybe people that maybe their network is bad or they are blind or they're using screen readers, those kind of people, right? They can easily just see the description of that image and then they understand what that image is trying to represent. So when you're creating images, it's always a good idea to make sure that the alt attribute is there and that the alt attribute works correctly. We need to quickly finish up. Oh, there's no more time. So let's add image. How do you add an image? How do you add an image to your website? Well, one of the easiest things you can do to add an image to your website is to copy the image link. If the image is already online, you can just go and copy the image link and paste it in that SRC. So let me use an example. Let me say in this Google search now, I wanted to add, um, I don't know, these images are not looking very nice. Okay, let me just use this one. Let me use this one. So I can right click on this image, click on copy image address, and then come here and paste it and save. Now when I do that and come here, my browser can actually go and get the image from the internet and send it for me. This image is very big, so let's go with a smaller one. Let me use the one that is coming from my profile website self. Wait, hold on. Let me use the one that's coming from here. So I'm going to right click, copy image address, and paste it here. Save. Did I save? I haven't saved yet. Okay, save. Save now, you. Save. Okay. Mm. And then you see that the image is actually showing up here, right? So this one is for if the image is already on the internet, right? But if the image is not on the internet, if the image is on your system, then what you can do is you can put the image in the same folder as this project and then reference it directly from the folder. So let me do that one. Let me do that one now. Okay, so I'm going to go to my gallery, get an image that I already have in my gallery. You guys already know this one now. My best image so far. It even has a weird name number, so that's good, perfect for this explanation I'm going to give. So I'll copy the image. I'll come to the my projects folder. Go to my projects folder. Chat, we don't have much time again, God. Ah, okay. All right. Where's it? Where's it? Where's it? Where's it? It's my projects folder here. Mepe, mepe, mepe. I'll paste it here. Good. So now it's inside here. So you see the image here. It's all numbers all through. So how do I get this image? I'm going to do dot forward slash, and you see that VS Code will suggest the image link here. So I'll put that and save. And instead of the alt attributes, oh my this one is back. My AI is back. So put the alt attributes, and then if I come here and take a look at it, you see that it is now here. Is this call still on? Oof. Where's the call? I'm sorry. Oh my god. Okay, so yeah, that's basically how you add an image, right? 3 more minutes, 3 more minutes. What else do we need to cover? A link to your favorite website. I'm just going to choose this as my favorite website, this link. Now, to add a link to your website, you use the anchor element. The anchor element looks like this. So the anchor element is A, and then it always have a href, so you can put the link inside that href. When you put the link in the href there, okay, let's do it again. So anchor elements with the link to the href, and then inside the opening and closing tag, right? You can put the dribble, like sorry, put the description of the link. So I can say digital school management system design. Save. And voila, this is my website. Relax, reload. That's not still saved. God have mercy upon us. Anyway, so when it saves, it is going to show up here. Yeah, see it. Digital School Management System Design. Now, of course, it doesn't look that very nice, and that's because there's no CSS to it. We've not added a lot of CSS to it yet. But when you add CSS to the website, it start to look better. So you guys can explore adding the CSS to your own. I wish you the best with your tax. Please do it. If you have any feedback you want to give, go ahead and give it. If you have any questions, just ask it on the group. This call has ended. Thank you very much for joining this call. I will share the link to the videos in the group very shortly. So have a nice day, everyone. Bye.